Welcome to 2025, and this is the Control and Compound January update. We're going to talk about inflation, interest rates, stock markets, Bitcoin, real estate. Let's dig in. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Control and Compound. I'm Darren Mitchell, and joining me as always, Christina Wyatt. Christina, how you doing?
Hi, Darren. Happy New Year.
Happy
We're
New
into
Year.
2025. Where does the time go? Here we are. Another year. Fresh new year.
All right. Exciting year coming up. Let's talk about some exciting stuff happening in the Canadian economy. And Christina, we always like to start with the Bank of Canada. A lot of people are interested in interest rates. Any news on the Bank of Canada from last month?
Yeah, so we had a Bank of Canada announcement on December 11th. They did announce another 50 basis point rate cut. So the Bank of Canada rate is now sitting at 3.25%, prime at 5.45. So that's a total of 175 basis points that we have seen drop over 2024. So significant decrease. They didn't know if we'd get that full 50 points. People were saying it might be 25 basis points instead, but 50 basis points drop. So heading into this year at a 3.25% Bank of Canada rate. We do have another announcement coming up on January 29th, so not long before we hear from them again and see what they're going to do. Of course, they're going to go look back at those inflation numbers. And if we look back over the last couple months of inflation, the numbers for November 2024 did come out and the inflation rate dropped to 1.9%. So a little bit below the target, which is good news in deciding, those rate cuts. The decline is driven by easing prices in travel services, retail discounts. We had Black Friday in November, those types of things. So we did see that decrease. Now, not every Canadian, as we've talked about lots of times, Canadians are not actually feeling that decrease. We've had that inflation throughout the year. Rent year over year rent increases are very high. Grocery prices are still very high. So with inflation at that target that Bank of Canada is looking for, when we see these new interest rate announcements or Bank of Canada rate announcements in January, I think they're going to be more looking at the economic outlook, right? We're not going to be focused as much on the inflation side of things. We might even need to eliminate this topic altogether if it stays the way that it is. Might not have many updates, but they're going to be going into that economic outlook where we'll kind of dig a bit more into that in the next section of our updates, right?
Well, I'd love inflation not to be something we talk about all the time because it's under control. But like the next topic, we were joking before we started recording. Usually, the Canadian dollar is not much exciting stuff to talk about. We mention it every month, but Canadian dollar, we've got not exciting. We've got news on the Canadian dollar. What's going on there?
Yeah, so the Canadian dollar has faced significant pressure over the last month. So on December 19th, we hit 69.6 cents. That's low. That is the 5-year low. That was hitting the 5-year low just earlier this month, so back in December, right? So several factors come into play with the Canadian dollar. We've got some declining oil prices. That's hurt Canadians' resource-driven economy. We've had significant rate cuts that they're looking at that. Now, that makes Canadians' assets a little bit less attractive to foreign investors. And we have that political uncertainty right now. So we all know last month, Freeland announced her resignation. That is a little bit of turmoil for us in Canada. So, that's a bit of volatility. We also have those U.S. tariffs threats that we're hearing from Trump. That's creating some more volatility. That's going to affect our key export sectors like lumber, agriculture, aluminum. So, it looks like the loonie struggles are compounding, especially with the U.S. dollar strength, right? Like their Federal Reserve is being very hawkish at this point and their dollar is doing very well. So looking ahead, the Canadian dollar's performance will obviously depend on what's in store for 2025, but lots of different things that we're looking at this point.
Wow. Jump into the stock markets. The stock markets had another good month in December. The S&P 500 in the States was up over 5%, 26% year to date, 30% over a year. And the Canadian S&P was up 4.5%, a little over 20% on the year. And there's really a lot of optimism in the U.S. side. Both consumer confidence and business owner outlook are up significantly. So people think things are going to get better. Lot's going to depend upon this new American administration. Are they really going to be pro-business? Are they going to be less regulation? Are they going to be lower taxes? All those things could spur the U.S. economy and the U.S. stock market. So again, another exciting year in 2025 in economic news that we have to watch. Bitcoin. Well, Bitcoin, December was another great month for Bitcoin. Bitcoin was up. Now it had a little fallback, back up. So, depending what day you listen to this, where it'll be. But Bitcoin was up about 15% in the month, which is, what's that, 136%, between 136 and 140% over a 1 year period. So an amazing year for Bitcoin. And really, all eyes are on those Trump administration, the nominees that were pro-crypto. Will they be accepted by the Senate as members of his cabinet? So interesting to see how that happens. And then, this kind of talk of the strategic reserve, U.S. getting into the strategic reserve on Bitcoin. I mean, that could happen. That could have a significant impact. Executive order could have a small impact if they actually pass legislation, which wouldn't happen doubtfully in the first quarter. But if they did, that could be a huge outlook at Bitcoin. And then, Michael Saylor just keeps plugging along. The CEO of MicroStrategy just keeps buying billions of dollars worth of Bitcoin. Like every Monday, it seems, Michael Saylor bought a bunch. So I just pulled up the stats for November. They bought $2 billion worth on November 11th, $4.6 billion on November 18th, $5.4 billion worth on the 25th of November, and $1.5 billion worth on December 2nd. So that's one company buying billions and billions of Bitcoin, dollars worth of Bitcoin every week. So crazy. Going to be an exciting year for Bitcoin for 2025. We're not Bitcoin experts. We're just like to talk about it. But yeah, fun times in Bitcoin. Now, what about real estate, Christina? Are we going to see a different year in 2025? A lot of uncertainty on the real estate last year. What's going on the past month?
Well, looking at the real estate stats closing out the year in December 2024, there's definitely signs of growth and resilience. So driven by those Bank of Canada interest rate cuts, we did see more buyer confidence. So stats are going up. It's been pretty smooth, conservative, right? It's been pretty straightforward. At the end of the year, our national home prices, the average home price was, it rose to $720,000. So that's a 6.3% increase year over year. That marks the largest monthly gain in 16 months back in November. So we've seen the home price go up. Home sales have also started to go up. So since May till December, total sales were up 18.4%. So the real estate market is active and doing great. Now it's a mixed bag where you go in the country, as we always talk about, Toronto, the home prices hit higher levels. Sales rise 1.9% month over month. So we're still seeing it a bit slower there. Vancouver, their benchmark home price hit $1.172 million, so up 2%. And Atlantic Canada is really remaining one of the hot spots with rising residential prices and sales fueled by, strong population growth and immigration. So we're seeing a lot of people focus in on those Atlantic provinces when they're purchasing. For real estate investment trends, we've seen rental properties definitely, with the rising rental demand, it's driving stronger returns in the multifamily, with rents increasing 8.3% year over year. Like that's the highest in decades. We need those rental properties. It's a great place for real estate investors. So we're seeing multi-residential investments as well. The investment in multi-residential properties reached $3.5 billion in Q2 of 2024. So that really highlights investor focus on income generating assets, right? Getting into those multi-units. And then we're also seeing like we had mentioned, the secondary markets. People are looking at places like Calgary, Saskatoon, Moncton, trying to get in at lower entry costs and find that cash flow. So that's what we're seeing right now. I feel like the real estate market's pretty smooth and consistent, different places, different things, but overall ending the year with some growth, which is nice to see.
Very cool. Industry news. I thought this was interesting. I looked up, the setback. Remember, we deal with cash value life insurance, participating whole life, and the fund, the billions of dollars in those funds that we help our clients become a part of. It's actually owned by the policyholders. So the policyholders benefit from the growth of that fund. But it's still relevant to say, well, how are the insurance companies that manage these funds or the insurance industry as a whole doing? You obviously want the industry you're involved in to do well. So I looked up how the share prices did for some of the major insurance companies. So in 2024, Sun Life stock was up 24%. Manulife stock was up 50%.
Whoa.
That was a phenomenal year for Manulife. Great West, which would include Canada Life and London Life, up 7.43%. And then IA, Industrial Alliance, up 48%. So, that's good news in our industry. We want those companies to have healthy balance sheets. We want those companies to be around for another 150 years like they've been around for the last 150 years. So good news on the industry front. Economic news, not as great news. We saw December's just collapse of finances. Freeland resigned the day she was going to release the economic update. And if you go back, Trudeau was only going to run $10 billion deficits. That was it, just for a couple of years and then back to balance. Well, he's never balanced it, and those little deficits kept increasing. And then his guardrail was 40 billion is the most deficit. That's our guardrail. We're not going to go past that. And they missed it slightly by $22 billion.
Slightly.
So it was a $62 billion deficit. And again, there's a difference between deficit and debt. Deficit is just how much more you're spending each year than you're bringing in. So just in that 1 year period, $62 billion more was spent than they brought in. That's not great news. If we look at the total debt, so when Trudeau came into power, the debt, the federal Canadian debt, was $616 billion. It is now more than doubled to $1.3 trillion. Trillion. We're into the T's now. So the debt is $1.3 trillion. To put that in perspective, that debt is like a credit card. The credit card payment on that debt each year is $54 billion. That's more than the Canadian government gives the provinces for health transfers. So they're now spending more on interest payments on the debt than they are on the health transfers. So if you think of a credit card, they've got about $1 billion a week they are spending just to cover our credit card debt or our total national debt. So that's, part and part why the Canadian dollar has dropped below 70 cents for the first time in years. It's the economic news in Canada is not great. And some of these things start to spiral too, right? If the dollar goes down, it's going to make our imports more expensive. It's going to drive up costs because we buy so much stuff from the U.S. and that's going to perhaps spur inflation. And that could, not great news. Hopefully, Canadian government can right the ship, but spending is out of control in Canada.
Yeah. Period. It is out of
Nothing
control.
else to say there.
Yeah,
Spending is out of control. Stop spending
out
money.
Of control. Yeah.
If you're listening, Mr. Trudeau, stop spending money.
So that is something we're definitely going to be needing to track on our updates going forward. So if you're listening or watching us right now, make sure you hit that subscribe button and you hit that bell button so you know when new content's coming out, because you're not going to want to miss these updates. Okay, moving on to better news, though. Let's talk about Control and Compound news. We had a great end to the year. We officially moved into our office, which has been amazing. So we've even got our sign up on the wall, and everything's good to go. All the staff are moved in, comfortable, and good to go. So the team's ready to go, which is awesome. We also were excited to announce that we're teaming up with Keyspire, right? You spoke on the big stage with Shaq back in the fall. And from there, we've decided to work closer with Keyspire. We're going to be on some webinars. You're going to be on you're going to be speaking at their event come next fall. So really excited to get in with those guys and start working with them. Also, we're all lined up for the multifamily conference in May. So excited to be getting back to Toronto for that event. We'll be talking more and more about it as these things get closer. But just an exciting year ahead of great things and events that we're going to be a part of. I'm just excited to see where this year takes us. Yeah,
it was a fun year. Control and Compound. I think 2025 is even going to be a more exciting year. I'm looking forward to a couple new staff members again. So really, really good times at Control and Compound. Speaking of Control and Compound, last month we had some really nice podcast episodes. Thanks for those that are listening. And don't forget to subscribe if you do listen. We had one on Bitcoin surge. That was good because we saw this massive spike in Bitcoin. So we tried to kind of explain what was going on there. We did one on Control and Compound values. And that was one, we didn't know how much to share. And then we're like, you know what? Let's just share. These are our core values. This is what we live by. This is how the company operates. This is how our employees operate. So if you didn't check that one out, make sure you check that out. We did one on habits of the wealthy. Thought this was interesting. Like, what do wealthy people do? Like, Tony Robbins always, if you want what the wealthy have, just copy what they're doing. So we thought we did a good episode on what are the habits of the wealthy and maybe some of those habits you can incorporate in your life. And then we did one on predictions. We looked at 2024 predictions from a year ago and go, all right, how'd we do? And then we looked at what are our predictions for 2025. So a lot of good podcast episodes last month.
Yes, great episodes. It was really fun doing those predictions again this year. So coming up in January, we have some more exciting podcasts. You sat down with Erwin Zito and he talked about investing in the U.S. So for any of those real estate investors out there that want to learn more about investing in the U.S. or doing it themselves, you're going to want to tune into that episode. We also did an episode on the debt dilemma in Canada. So we talked a bit about how Canada's debt is out of control. We did a little bit of research on personal debt in Canada and have a podcast on that. We've also got lots of great and exciting podcasts coming out in the new year for business owners on infinite banking, covering all that great stuff. So make sure you stay tuned.
Awesome. All right. That's the monthly update. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Have a wonderful day. Thanks for watching this episode of Control and Compound. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that bell button so you never miss a new episode. And if you're ready to learn more, head to our website, controlandcompound.com. The link's below.